The next video is the next installment for Chips in the Crossword gang, and we're up to chapter 9. The ferry boat swung sideways into the river and the town lights gradually shrank away. They leaned near the stern, looking not too inquisitively at faces and at the cluster of chained bicycles, the roan among them, propped up against the bulkhead. Charlie a bit moody again. Bloke could be pedalling like mad for Chatham or somewhere by now. "Those stairs going down," said Maggie. "Canteen? Selling crisps or anything?" Apparently Chips was the only one who'd ever used the ferry. "Takes about 10 minutes to get across, so nobody actually starves. We better split up." The lights on the opposite bank were drawing near when three of them rediscovered each other. "No Jeremy yet?" "Been downstairs," said Charlie. "Saloon not too cosy, is it?" "Nobody there except an old lady half asleep and a woman with a baby squealing in a pushchair." "Where's Jeremy?" asked Chips. "Probably fallen overboard," said Maggie, but he suddenly started up something important in his manner. "Seen that bloke in a cap?" "Don't be stupid," said Maggie. "Just about everybody on board is wearing a cap." "Yeah, but when I walked towards him he dodged. Saw him again though, nosing around the bikes." Now and then Jeremy said something intelligent which just might be worth taking notice of. Chips watched the opposite lights drawing close. "Not much time. Better see if we can check him out." Not much of a description, but Chips spotted the man coming away from the bikes. Young cap perched on top of a haystack of hair. Trust Jeremy not to have mentioned that. He evidently wanted to dodge Chips too, for he turned abruptly and mounted the iron stairway to the wheelhouse, his face touched with red and green from the navigation lights. He opened the glass-panelled door, vanished inside and closed it behind him. So much for Jeremy's detective work then. To have access to the wheelhouse, he had to be a member of the crew, scruffy clothes or not, and plenty of people were child dodgers. The engines were thumping into reverse. The ferry boat squashed against a quay, using their old tyres strung alongside as buffers. A deckhand did a lassoing trick with the ropes and bollards. The hoisted gangplank squeaked down on its chains. Chips nearly lost the others in the rush. Maggie turned up with Jeremy, Charlie heaving in his chopper down the ramp behind them. "Never been across here," said Maggie. "What's it like?" "Siberia," said Chips. "There's a long road leading off to factories and places. Town's quite a way off. Keep your eyes skinned, everybody." Once through the barrier, 2 or 3 motorcycles roared on up the dark road. Then at least a dozen push bikes followed, almost identical riders bent over the handlebars. Soon they began to thin out as they travelled at different speeds and took different directions into yards and factory entrances. Chips, Charlie, Maggie and Jeremy cruised behind, watching. Maggie grumbled about another broken spoke. Trees darkened around them, a cloud crossed the moon. Not many street lamps, a speckle of stars shedding only a mean glow. Still a couple of bicycles ahead, one without a rear light. The river began to feel as far away as Euphrates. Suddenly there was a van a stone's throw along, parked in a lay-by. Charlie was in the lead. He dived for cover at once, lights out. The rest got the message and joined him in the scrub at the roadside, the click-clack of Maggie's broken spikes dying like trampled crickets. Van a mere silhouette, dim figures moving about, rear door grasping open, something being loaded inside. A bicycle, almost certainly one of the 2 that followed. Subdued voices, the shapes of faces staring whitely back towards the scrub. The rays of a flashlight swished overhead, but with no certainty of penetration. Evidently whoever had heard a sound assumed it was an animal or a bird. Nobody came back to investigate. The van door slammed, the motor throbbed to life, and still without lights, the vehicle pulled out of the lay-by and headed not too fast up the dark road. Then the rear lights flared on as the van gathered speed. Charlie the chopper panted. "What's the next county after Essex?" "Hertfordshire," said Chips. "Let's hope we find a nice haystack to sleep in. They could be going anywhere." Chips stood up on his pedals, outpacing Charlie and watching the red lights rapidly dwindling to needle points. By now Maggie and Jeremy were at least 2 bends back. Then the village, darkly dotted with rooftops. A church, a short row of shabby shops. The van was still in sight, slowing down. Twin stoplights ablaze, then an amber warning signal flashing on and off, indicating a swing to the left. Chips was the first at the corner, and the van had disappeared, mysteriously swallowed up in the narrow street into which it had turned. Perhaps not the mysterious, though. Watching at the corner, waiting for the others to catch up, Chips heard the rasp of closing shutters nearby. A single dusty lamp at the far end shed its meagre light on closed shops' fronts. There was a garage with old-fashioned petrol pumps standing like a row of mummies in the forecourt, and immediately beyond, the workshop shutters, which a thread of light showed beneath. Chips had his audience back, bikes leaning at the corner, lamps out, Maggie querulous. In there, but suppose it was only somebody catching a lift and not a bike thief. Only way to find out, said Chips. Doing what? Nothing too heroic. Wouldn't mind a peek inside, though. Make sure we got our facts right, then head over to the law. Saw a telephone box around the corner. Can't see any windows, said Charlie. They were creeping towards the petrol pumps. At the side of the workshop, Chip spotted a window partly open, several feet up. Just a glow beyond. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, you know what to do, said Chips. He heaved himself onto the ledge, squeezed through and vanished. Faint clattering sound inside, a murmur of voices. Minutes were like hours, but if Chips had been seized and tortured, he was keeping his screams to himself. A car passed on the main road, then another, headlights briefly searing the walls, lending a moment's gold of life to the petrol pumps. Eventually Charlie whispered, said, I'm going in after him. Give me a leg up, Jeremy. Jeremy was just wondering which leg Charlie meant when a dog barked somewhere behind them. It fled towards them on scuffling paws, sniffed at the petrol pumps, dithered a bit in brief confusion, then found the open window. It leapt at once for the ledge, fell back again, picked itself up, made a second attempt, and this time wriggled through the gap. At the corner, a vehicle had just pulled up, blue light winking. The figure of a man came running. His face was in shadow, but Jeremy for once recognized him. The untidily dressed and fair-haired man from the ferry. Police! Chips, in there? And his dog, we think, said Maggie. Mitzi, he is hoping that if somebody bungs a 10-inch spanner at her, she won't try to catch it. To their amazement, he snatched off his cap, removed his hair and stuffed it into a pocket, then put his cap back on. He didn't try to climb through the window, but turned round to the front, thumping on the shutters till somebody, taking his time about it, eased open the inset door. A second policeman, this one in uniform, pelted along from the car, blinking blue at the corner, pushed his way past Maggie, who had her nose in the chink, and shoved the door shut behind him. They waited, turning into stones again, until after a few more long minutes, Chips emerged, dragging a Labrador at the end of a piece of string. She had what was left of a rag rabbit in her mouth. Chips looked chirpy. We'll have to hang on for a bit. The police are charging the thieves. 3 of them. Everything is being taken down and may be used as evidence. But one of the crooks just can't stop talking, trying to shove all the blame onto the nuggets. Nicked bikes with a dozen in there. So isn't Janie's a blue one with gold trim and a little hooter on the handlebar? Silver-plated pedals, more or less, said Maggie, chewing impatiently. But when is somebody going to explain what's happening? I tried asking, shrugged. Chips was told to push off and wait. And that ends that installment for Chips and the Crossword Gang.